Welcome back to Nature Labs, where there's breaking news. If you haven't already heard, Susan Holt and her Liberal Party will form a majority government in the province of New Brunswick. That's big news on a few fronts. First of all, even though a few people couldn't figure out how to assemble a cardboard ballot box in New Brunswick, they do know how to tabulate ballots, unlike British Columbia, who are still trying to figure out how to do that. Sorry, BC. But the biggest news, of course, is that it's a Liberal win in a provincial election, which, let's also be honest, that hasn't happened in a while. So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has found himself a provincial ally to go along with his other one in Newfoundland. And now Susan Holt will be that sort of stalwart of Liberal policies on the provincial level. Now, how much she'll throw her weight around and how much she'll ally herself with Prime Minister Trudeau will remain to be seen. But certainly it'll be a shift in politics because Blaine Higgs, as we discussed before, certainly was a bastion of the sort of the new conservative movement. He had some very considered to be strong conservative ideological positions, and he also had some baggage which may have hurt him in the end tonight. How much impact does this have for, say, Pierre Poilievre's federal Conservative Party? Well, probably not that much. And the reason is because of that aforementioned baggage. This is probably a one-off, not really a roadblock or a red flag for Pierre Poilievre. What I think we're seeing here more than anything is that across the BC election, this election, and all elections we've seen recently in Canada is that they are change elections, which means the electorate, the voters, are becoming frustrated with the incumbents. They want to see change. It doesn't matter who's in power, they want someone else to take over power. So whether that's conservative or liberal, it's just about a changing of the guard. And so this is probably less about a wave of support for liberals as it is a wave of support for change. So that's probably the good news for Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives. He's still on the right side of being the one who wants to change an incumbent in power. The other side of it, however, was that the Francophone vote and the urban vote certainly broke pretty heavily for the Liberals, as opposed to the rural vote, which still broke pretty heavily for the Progressive Conservatives. So as we saw in BC, again, there's this urban-rural divide, but there's also this Francophone English divide. And that will be something that Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives will probably want to take a look at to see how their policies are playing with Francophone voters, which of course matters in a few federal ridings in New Brunswick, but also matters in Quebec, which is a big stakes province in the next federal election. So there's a few things that will matter. Of course, the policies that Susan Holt chooses to enact as Premier, as we discussed before, will have an impact on the economy, on social justice issues, and of course on the environment. Because at the end of the day, lest we forget, the provinces matter. They have a big say on big files, and what they do ultimately shapes this country in ways probably bigger than just what the federal government can do alone. So this election does play into that mosaic of policies that we see across the country, and though it might be a small province, it certainly packs a mighty punch. So New Brunswick matters. We love you, New Brunswick. Congratulations on your new government, or not, depending on where you stand on the ledger. But more than anything, take away from this election that we are certainly in a change scenario right now across Canada. That's one of the big things take away. The urban-rural divide, still a very big issue in New Brunswick and all across this country. That's worrying for our democracy. And third point, I guess, also worth noting, was the Green vote didn't do quite as well as some people were projecting. Unlike BC, they will not hold the balance of power. What does that mean? Well, it means they won't be having sort of that final say in what policies get advanced. So maybe the environment doesn't take quite the center stage as they were hoping it would in the New Brunswick legislature. And certainly across the country, we're seeing maybe a dilution of the Green vote as a whole and a lowering of priorities of environmental issues in the face of this sort of affordability and livability crisis we're seeing across the land. So those are the big takeaways that I see tonight. Of course, data is still pouring in. We'll keep you updated, keep the context coming in for you so you understand why elections like this one matters in your class and, of course, to all of our lives, whether you live in Fredericton, Vancouver, or anywhere in the country.